Okay, they're walking in. You can start now.
Okay, thanks. So dear colleagues and from the statistical community, welcome to the side event of the 56th session of the UN Statistical Commission, focusing on modernizing UN data, partner data innovation, usability and impact. So my name is Yongyi Min. I'm from the UN Statistical Division. So as we get virtually today, so we stand at a very crucial intersection of statistical innovation, artificial intelligence, and sustainable development. The modernization of the UN data platform represents not just a technical upgrade, but also a fundamental shift in how we approach data integration, accessibility, and utility for evidence-based policymaking. So over the next 90 minutes, we will hear first from four presentation from experts from UN Statistical Division, Google Data Commons, UNICEF, and CoData, who will share insight on recent advances and future direction in data modernization. Then we will have a panel discussion, which will explore how we can leverage partnerships across sector to enhance data interoperability and make our statistical data AI ready and improve cross-domain integration. So I will now invite UN Statistical Division Director Stefan Schoenfest to deliver the opening remarks to formally begin our session. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Yonggi. Good morning from New York, all over the planet. So we are on the road to our Statistical Commission session, which will start in about a good week from now. And we'll bring together all the chief statisticians from countries and international agencies, and all our partners to New York. And I'm very excited that we have so many interesting events on our road to the Statistical Commission. And when I'm asked to introduce something, I look usually at the title and I find one word that I particularly like. And in this title, I really like the word partnering. And our key message today, I think, is that we are working on this UN data project. You will know exactly what it is, but it is a fantastic example of partnerships between the public and the private sector, partnership between the United Nations agencies, and partnership with the member states, who are, of course, the original producers and custodians and owners of the official statistical data that we are talking about. So this UN data project is actually, the idea was born many, many years ago because the UN has fantastic data, thanks to the member states who are producing data in all forms and domains. One of the challenges is, however, that the UN data system is decentralized. And of course, our expert colleagues, let's say, for instance, in the health organization, WHO, will manage health-related data, and other colleagues around ILO, labor-related data, and we in New York, we have national accounts and census data. How do we bring all of this together so that the user can easily access it, can actually use it, visualize it, work with it, and bring also different data domains together? And that's how the idea of UN data was born many, many years ago, and we had a first version, but it was quickly out of date, and now we are in the process of modernizing it. And we found, of course, a fantastic partner in Google, who are actually in the business of building access roads between users and information. So we are very pleased to cooperate with them to leverage Google's data commons open source technology to bring all of that official data that is from traveling from the countries to the UN agencies, sitting there, quality checked, comparable across the globe according to our international standards. And now we are bringing them together at the fingertips of a user in using modern technology and also capabilities to visualize it in attractive ways and use it, because as I always say, a good data item is a used data item. And we are doing this also within the framework of the Secretary General's call for a data-driven United Nations, where we were encouraged to use cutting-edge technology to create a central hub for the seamless access to official UN data. And we can do this because we have the support of all of our partners, as I explained above. So that's the background. And we have a number of objectives with these meetings. We want to showcase where we are, what are the new exciting features of the UN data platform, what data sets can you find there, how can you translate data into analysis and storytelling, and how do we build the access road to this. We want to highlight cross-domain integration. I think this is very important. I mean, because everything is connected to everything. We do not want to just users do not want to just look at, for instance, economic data on one side and social data and environment data in the other side. We want to find all of that information together so that we have a better understanding of the complex interrelationship between the various domains. And we, the statisticians, have to enable that analysis by making our different domain statistics accessible and understandable in an integrated manner. We want to show the AI readiness. This is particularly exciting because this requires the interoperability of standards and metadata frameworks. That's technical language, but I mean, what comes out of it is that the user has an easy experience by being able to type in a question that he or she may have on their mind. And then the underlying system does, with the help of AI and modern technology, the rest of the work. And then finally, we want to showcase our partnership, as I explained to you, under the Global Digital Compact. We have gotten this mandate from the Secretary General and from the General Assembly, and we're working hard on it all together. So with these introductory remarks, I hope I whet your appetite for all the coming presentation, and I return the floor back to Yongi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Before we kick off the presentations and the panel, I want to remind you of a few housekeeping matters. First, the microphones have been disabled, so no one accidentally unmute themselves. So please submit any comments or questions on the chat window. We will try to address as many as possible. This event is also being streamed live on YouTube and it's being recorded. So we will start with our first part of the event. First, I would like to invite my colleagues, Heather Page, to present the UN Data Platform and its newest features and data release. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Youngie. Let me share my screen, hopefully without incident. Okay, can you see it okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to provide an update. First, an overview of the UN Data Platform, and then also delving a bit into the updates of the team that has been quite busy as of late, and also we'll show a short live demo. So I'd like to just echo some of the comments from Stefan about the mandate for the UN data modernization, which is a response to the UN Secretary General's data strategy. It's informed by the roadmap for innovating UN data and statistics. It's also endorsed by the UN Secretary General's Executive Committee. And last year during the Statistical Commission, this work was acknowledged, including the partnership with Google to modernize the platform as a unified entry point for UN statistical data. So since its launch, the UN Data team has collaborated with pilot partner agencies, including WHO, ILO, UNICEF, ECLAC, UNODC, to start to integrate this data. And so this journey has many, many steps. And so the integration of data actually comes in different pieces. So the key components of the UN data is that it really unifies, or it aims to unify data from across the UN system for better usability and impact, leveraging semantic web technologies and interoperability standards. So really, what does this mean? That we have data integration pipelines, a knowledge graph infrastructure, natural language search capabilities, interactive data visualizations, user-friendly front-end APIs, as well as resources for capacity development, communication, and outreach. So the UN data goals in particular are to increase visibility and access to these sources of data, improve the search and discoverability of the statistical data for all types of users, to really enable interoperability of the statistical data from across the UN system, and to really enhance that integration across domains using open data best practices. It also really aims to streamline data provisioning through data management and automation tools, as well as enable rapid content creation. So some of the newest features and data releases that the UN Data team has been developing include some new backend processes and data updates. So we have a custom data commons. So this work really migrated from a Google-owned data commons instance to a custom data commons instance, where the licensing and management is fully run by the UN Data and the UNSD team. So this was actually a major endeavor by the team, and one that really tries to set us up well for the future and for future plans for the platform. We also have ETL process improvements. So this really developed a standard guide for the ETL process, shortening the time from data ingestion to production. And now we are also in the final testing and validation stages with UNICEF data, which will soon be available on the UN Data platform. So I will go through some of the site updates, as well as the overall site. So as just a quick review for those who may not be familiar with UN Data, we've built a robust platform that includes exploration of the SDGs, 12 thematic areas, data stories and insights and data insights, as well as a spotlight on our partners. And so this here is just a really quick run through of our homepage for these different elements. In addition, the platform leverages a natural language search, so you can ask a simple question and receive a digestible, accurate response in the form of authoritative data and visualizations. So for instance, just like this. So we're searching for how much food goes wasted around the world, and I will let my demo catch up with me. And so your question will quickly return a series of easy-to-read, downloadable graphs generated based on this specific query. You'll also find an extensive amount of context and maps that help to understand the data in a tangible way. So today I'm really excited to also showcase new features and functionality we've been working on over the past few months. So I'll start by showing our revamped thematic areas page. So taking feedback from our UN agency partners and users, we've added a number of new features. So this page is an alternative to the natural language search. It takes the data in UN Data and categorizes it under themes, allowing users to quickly narrow their search to a topic. So first off, a new and improved landing page, and you can filter your search by selecting a country. So here we've clicked on Argentina. And as you can see, selecting country or area takes the user to a filtered view of the thematic areas with the region pre-selected and the results filtered. So we can do the same for themes. So we'll click on health theme in the filter. And this new version allows for more detailed searching and filtering before expanding into charts and graphs. But instead of just clicking on themes and sub-themes, we've also added a filtered search option for the thematic areas. The goal is really to make discovery for new and experienced users alike faster and simpler. So we'll toggle back to the world view in just a second and search for clean fuels. Yes. And we'll quickly find the maps we're looking for: proportion of population with primary reliance on clean fuels and technologies for cooking. So, and lastly, for the thematic areas, we've added a toggle between an overview or catalog view for the themes, which is right here, allowing easier navigation into the themes and sub-themes. Okay, so now let's move over to the SDGs. So we've added similar features for SDGs with added functionality. So first, we'll click on all the Sustainable Development Goals to go into the new filter view. And then we now open up Goal 1, No Poverty, and immediately see the data stories and infographics tied to this goal. So a major change we've made is you can now quickly toggle between the data stories view and a catalog view. So this is the button right here, exactly. And this shows the hierarchy of goals, targets, and indicators in an easy to view list. So clicking on any of the target boxes in the SDGs takes you to the relevant charts and infographics. So here we're clicking on 111, and you can see the infographics and charts related to indicator 111. So based on user feedback, we've also made it easier to download and share infographics and external reports with this share and download button that is showing right now. So switching over to user support under our help button and help guide. Our help guide has extensive and ever-expanding information about how to search, navigate, and use the UN Data platform. In addition, we have a new blog where we'll be sharing updates on the latest data releases, highlighting new features such as the ones that we've described today, and engaging directly with our community of data partners and users for their feedback. So our aim with UN Data is to have a single platform for accessing authoritative data from across the UN system with a powerful, user-friendly search and analytical interface. We started with the SDG data and have since expanded to include new data sets from WHO, with more data sets from UNICEF, UNODC, ILO, and others on the way. So many of the new features shown today are based on user feedback from partners and UN agencies. So we've added a link to a feedback form in this slide deck that we'll share afterward and in the chat for you to provide some comments on what you find useful and what also can be improved. So we really look forward to continuing to grow the UN Data platform collaboratively with all of you. So I think I go to the next slide where I say thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Heather. And so our next speaker is Mr. Prem Ramaswamy from the head of Google's Data Commons. So Prem will present his reflection on open data and the role of AI for sustainable development with a focus on data gemma. Over to you, Prem.
Thank you, Youngie. Let me start off by thanking the United Nations team for being such wonderful partners in this effort as we got Data Commons up and running for them. This is an open source effort from Google, and over the last 2 years, we've had time to get very close to Stefan, Luis, Youngie, Danielle, Heather, and the full team at UN Stats, and it has been a wonderful partnership and really shows what teams can do when they come together and work well together along a shared mission and goal. I wanted to actually take the conversation a little bit of a different direction as to why putting all of this data in a common interoperable format is so important. When we think about data commons, our project actually started about 5 to 7 years ago. And at that time, we noticed that databases and data was being shared in a way that didn't allow it to be interoperable with one another. And what that meant was to make any database decision on an issue that was a holistic issue. And holistic issues can be health issues, can be women's rights issues, can be climate issues. You needed to be able to access data sets across a plethora of different databases and federal agencies or intergovernmental agencies, each which was collecting the data in their own unique format. Now, to do that, you needed to hire a computer scientist and data scientist, and these burdens and barriers basically ensured that the majority of our decision making was made without the usage of really hard data. We were flying blind as a society. And so we found this as a problem, and we worked closely with multiple partners. We've brought a bunch of data in ourselves, and you can play with this yourself on datacommons.org, which I would welcome you to go to. So you can go to datacommons.org, and I'll use a US example. I can type in income versus diabetes in US counties, and I can quickly get a graph of from the CDC and from the census, quickly showing where each county is shown here. And this is all serving in real time. Again, all done in an open source, openly accessible way for the world. And this really ties into our mission of Google of making all the world's data universally accessible and useful. But I wanted to talk about where this goes. So we're in an era of large models, and especially large language models. For those of you who have played around with tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity or even Gemini, one of the things you may find is these models are often not fully trustable. They tend to suffer from this problem where we don't have a clear concept of where they are sourcing their information from. And this can lead to what's known as hallucinations. And so our question was, now that we have all of this data in an AI-ready format, can we use data commons to enhance large language model reasoning and accuracy? So one of the things we played with was two different algorithms. One was called retrieval interleave generation, which was a format of fact checking, where the model runs and then we look to see the specific statistical numbers. Can we actually find a fact in data commons that matches that? And can we source back? And the other one was retrieval augmented generation, which was a very established concept, and the idea of appending a bunch to the prompt initially and then having it answer from that prompt. The real breakthrough or innovation here was that large language models are really good at natural language. And Data Commons has a natural language interface. So rather than teaching the large language model a new API or a new language, we were simply able to use the natural language and train the large language model on when to ask the question. And so I'll give you two quick examples of this. I talked about retrieval interleave generation, which was, again, double checking my trusty library. So let's use an example here. If you ask a question, has the use of renewables increased in the world? The language model will return two numbers saying they now provide over 12% of global energy consumption, up from 6%. But what we can do is we can take those numbers, 12% and 6%, and we can turn those into questions to data commons. What percentage of global energy comes from renewables, and what came from renewables in the year 2000? And what data commons is able to do is return a table of data. And what we'll see is the large language model actually hallucinated these two numbers quite a bit. But now we can get real numbers that go back to the global SDG database, so we can be more assured, and those tables are there, linkable, sourceable, all the way back. So here's an example of being able to fact check using data commons. The other example, of course, is retrieval augmented generation, where now we have to take the initial question and we have to change it. So this question starts as, has the use of renewables increased in the world? And we have to understand that that question means we should ask about renewable energy, how it's changed over time, consumption in different countries, and we'll get a bunch of data tables and we'll shove those into that initial prompt. And again, we get a similar answer, same numbers, but can source back. So these are two very, different algorithms, and this was a very early experiment. And we published all of this. If you actually Google Data Gemma, there's a whole blog post around this, as well as an academic research paper. And we've released the model weights, because Gemma is our open source model, so that everyone out there can play with it on their own. But now, why does this matter? When we think about a team like UN Data and UN Stats, they're getting 400 plus indicators from 193 countries across these 17 SDGs every 6 months. And a team of dedicated statisticians is sitting there inside UN Stats looking for the key indicators and the key movements to write a book that instructs policymakers on how we're doing and what we can do to improve. But in a future world, can we use tools like this to actually help us and help those folks not only find the right needle in a haystack full of needles, can we use it to identify and write 193 individualized books per country? And so to give an example of where this could go, and again, this is a real example you can play with the open models that we've released. If we asked what progress has Pakistan made against health goals, and by the way, I'm going to show you a retrieval augmented generation example. The open model is able to turn that into a bunch of questions around things like access to clean water, different disease rates like tuberculosis and HIV, infant and maternal mortality, so on and so forth. And what it's able to do is take each of these tables, many of them, and stuff all of them into the prompt. And then it's able to produce an answer for you. So here's a sample of that answer. So it's able to say that it's seen positive trends in areas like life expectancy, while it's seen concerning trends in undernourishment. And why this is interesting is because the LLM is able to reason on its own. It's able to say that when life expectancy goes up, that's good, but when undernourishment goes up, that's bad. That's it using its reasoning power on its own. It's able to highlight areas of mixed results like malaria incidents where it can't see a clear trend line. And most interestingly, it's able to say what it doesn't know, where there are data gaps and where better data needs to be collected. So this is an example of using a large language model that's grounded on real world data because of the work the UN team did to make their data AI ready, and the effect this can hopefully have moving forward. So thank you very much for your time. Again, I invite all of you to play with this at Data Gemma yourself. So you can Google Data Gemma and play with this, or play with this on the Data Commons instance that the UN is running. You can Google UN Data Commons and play with all of this yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prem. And next, if you have a question for Prem and Heathers, and please type in the chat box. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Yves Jacques, the Chief of Frontier Data and Tech Unit from UNICEF, to give his reflections on making data searchable and AI ready. Over to you, Yves.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just have to open my system settings so that this new installation of Zoom can actually access my screen. Should just take me a moment here. But right, so I'm Chief of the Frontier Data and Technology Unit at UNICEF. We work in the data and analytics section. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to quit and reopen this Zoom so that I can give access to my screen. So maybe alter the order of panelists and I'll come on next. I apologize.
Okay, thanks. Then maybe I'll shift to the next speakers and while we rejoin the Zoom. Well, maybe we'll like to invite Mr. Simon Hobson, the Executive Director from CoData, and to present the importance of cross-domain data integration and interoperabilities. And Simon, over to you.
Thank you very much. So just let me. Okay. Thank you very much, and very happy to jump in. Hopefully you can see my slides. I'm Simon Hodson. I'm Executive Director of CoData. CoData, our official name, is the Committee on Data of the International Science Council. But we're not just a committee, we're an organization in our own right, an international NGO, and our mission is to make data as available and as usable as possible for science and to improve our planet and to address common goals. Now, I was asked to talk about the importance of cross-domain data integration and interoperability. So that's what I'll try and to address. In 2018, CoData was asked by the International Science Council to prepare a program of activity, which we called Making Data Work for Cross-Domain Grand Challenges. The premise of that, and really I think the justification for this discussion about why we need interoperability across disciplines and across domains, is the following. The major pressing global scientific and human challenges of the 21st century can only be addressed through research that works across disciplines, that incorporates data from many different sources to understand complex systems, and which ultimately uses a transdisciplinary approach to turn data into knowledge and then into action. So that's our credo, if you like. That's what we see as the fundamental challenge and the fundamental justification of the work we do for interoperability across domains or across disciplines. So we've been exploring this for some time, and there was a meeting of minds in 2018 with the Data Documentation Initiative, who themselves, in response to calls from social science and statistical data services, realized that they need to help enable those services to combine social science data with other sources of data, in particular data about the natural world. So we had a series of workshops to explore these issues. And then in 2022, we were fortunate enough to get a large grant from the European Commission for a project called World Fair. That completed in May 2024. And we're continuing that initiative in World Fair Plus. And I'll talk about World Fair, what came out of it, and our current activities, and in particular work. World Fair was a project with 11 case studies across a range of research areas. They're listed on the slide there. And that pedal diagram, which we loved, also became our World Fair logo. It was incredibly ambitious. It's hard enough to make data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable in a given domain or a given discipline. Imagine how difficult it is to try and combine data across disciplines. In the center of that diagram was a work package led by CoData with other partners to try and understand how we could address those issues and understand the data in particular disciplines and understand how those data could better be combined. Here is a list for your information of the World Fair outputs, in particular a set of reports and recommendations from the various case studies. But I think this audience might be most interested in our policy recommendations, where we call for an engineering approach to data stewardship and significant metadata uplift, and the cross-domain interoperability framework, which I'll speak about now. So the first draft of the CDIF was released in May 2024. It is categorically not a new standard. What I think the real originality of our approach and of the CDIF is that we're not trying to develop a new standard. What we're trying to do is to point to existing domain neutral standards, which can be used in conjunction with each other to address these issues of cross-domain interoperability. So what does that comprise? It comprises, in the first draft, 5 profiles with practical guidance to address 5 specific technical requirements or fundamental requirements when you need to integrate data. Discovery, controlled data access, controlled vocabularies, core data description, and I'll say a little bit more about that, and universals, because often when you're combining data sets, you need time and place and other shared concepts. So it's a preliminary guide for good standards-based practice in data description to better enable data integration for cross-domain research scenarios. Say a little bit about data description. This is based upon a new data standard, which has been around in draft for a few years, and so we've been able to experiment with it, called DDI-CDI, DDA cross-domain integration. And that describes data structures, a thing called the variable cascade, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and a process model for provenance and data processing. And that's proved to be a very valuable tool when we address issues of interdisciplinary data integration. So that was one step along the road, and it's a very ambitious initiative, and it will be continuing. I should mention that our colleague on this call, Luis Gonzalez, is one of the authors of CDIF and was leading a lot of the work on the data integration work package. This is our diagram of where we're going next and where we see our current activities. Building on those 5 profiles, we need to do more work on the semantics and good practice around semantics, a lot more work on the data description and integration and presenting a number of use cases. There's further work on access and how we control access to sensitive data sets, and for interdisciplinary scenarios as well, context, provenance and process. So we're not saying that we've finished the job, but we are saying that the current guidelines are very useful indeed. Here are two very quick examples of the sort of interdisciplinary use case that we're addressing. There's information on that slide about that. I'm not going to go into all the details, but one of these is a Wellcome and other funders funded project in East Africa, combining population level health data with clinical outcome data and taking an exposome approach. And the work that we've done in CDIF and CDI in particular is fundamental to the data integration process for that project. And we're also using the access recommendations for controlling fine-grained access to sensitive data sets. Another example from a European project that we worked on, combining social science survey data with environmental data. This sort of thing happens all the time, but with a standards-based approach, then that data integration activity can be repeated year on year with time series data sets and is more repeatable and we would argue more reproducible. So two examples to give some idea of why this is important. As I mentioned, we're continuing with our World Fair Plus initiative, building a set of partnerships. And whereas World Fair itself was one single project, World Fair Plus is a set of parallel projects which are listed here. I'm going to skip over, in the interest of time, skip over this slide very quickly. And there's a lot of letters on there, a lot of words on there, which makes it a bit rebarbative. But hopefully the slides will be made available afterwards. And this is to give you some indication of the ambition and the scope of the CDIF implementation projects that we now have, exploring how we can further develop CDIF, how useful it is for data integration for interdisciplinary research. And you can see the bolded words there, the range of research areas that we're seeking to address. And I will end my presentation with a plug for International Data Week in Brisbane in Australia. And the call for sessions is already open. And thank you very much for your attention. And I'll hand over to the next speaker, which was the one who was before me, which was Yves Jake.
Thank you very much, and sorry about that. I new install of Zoom and was having trouble making it work correctly. So maximize my screen here. So look, I work in the data and analytics section, and where we found ourselves at UNICEF about 6 years ago was a situation in which we had 8 different analytics units working across all areas in which we deliver data to deliver for children. So nutrition, child protection, child and maternal health, education, and so on. All of these analytics units producing really excellent data analytics work, also sustainable development goal indicators, and so on. But all of that work siloed and really unable to be discovered or used. So I want to take you through some of the steps that we put in place over the last 6 years to enable our data for search and AI. And I would really put that in the realm really of discovery and use. So how have we made it so that people can find our data and also use our data, and how are we taking the steps to make it AI ready? So really the first thing that we put in place was actually putting in a data warehouse using the SDMX standard. Many of you will be familiar with SDMX, Statistical Data Metadata Exchange Standard. It's an ISO standard. Enables you to not only put your data in a warehouse, but to have solid structured code behind it so that your data becomes interoperable and harmonizable and versionable and all those really nice abilities. Data behavior that we would like to see. So our first step really in this was about 5-6 years ago, was to take these 8 different analytics units to get them to agree on common code lists, some shared structures for their data, and then to iteratively get all of their data into a single warehouse. The other capability that is quite nice, with the DMX standard, is very API centric. So once we had our data in here, it also enabled us to have a really nice set of REST web services that we then begin to build other services over the top of. We felt like terms of discovery context, SDMX wasn't quite enough for us. And what we needed is a lot of metadata, reference metadata around our indicators so that we could help people understand more about what our indicators actually mean, not just the data points, not just the code lists, not just the structures. So we actually built what I would call a master data management system for all of our indicator data so that we're not just giving the codes and the names and so on, but also things like definitions, the rationale, the justification for actually creating these data points. And this was really a second level once we'd gotten our indicator data in a common warehouse, was to then take all our 8 units and to put all the metadata around their indicators into another system, also API driven, so that we could really solve our second problem of having as much context as possible around our data. And we were in this very inspired by the metadata fields that are part of the Sustainable Development Goal indicators. Having put those two in place, we actually needed a system that could put the two together, and where we started using Solr, a very, very common open source search engine. We use it on a software as a platform. What this enabled us to do is to take a document-oriented model in which every single data point is its own document that has a constellation of metadata referring to that data point. This enabled us to take all of our data points that we had in our indicator data warehouse and really connect those in a really powerful way with all the reference metadata that we had in our reference metadata management system. This was really a third step that we put in place. Now, what that enabled us to do is several things. I'm showing you a screenshot here from data.unicef.org. This is the data portal for UNICEF. Now, this is very kind of common table that you might see that's actually coming from our indicator data warehouse, very tabular kind of view, very dimensional view of the data. And this was the first step that was really useful for people. But in the end, it's also, for a lot of our users, it's not sufficiently accessible, you might say. Having done a lot of work on SEO with the data.unicef.org, feedback that we're getting from our users, our data is still too technical, our language is too technical. How can we actually bridge these divides so that we're reaching our users in the kind of language they speak? And that's where having put together a Solr search service then really enables us to take another step that for us has been crucial, which is what we call how many. And this is similar to what you've seen in the Google Data Commons work, which is really how do we take the common everyday language that our users might expect to be able to access our data and connect that to our kind of internal, highly technical language. And how many was came out of that work and using our Solr search engine, so that then you can see all these frequently asked questions. These questions actually are driven by user traffic, and not only are they driven by user traffic, it enables us to really maximize our search engine optimization, in that every single question that people ask us becomes actually a URL in the system. So you can see, I just clicked average life expectancy in Palestine. That is actually generated ultimately as user, as a friendly URL in the system, which really helps SEO in general, really helps drive search traffic. So this is kind of this final step that we took to put our data into a space where ordinary users can make sense of it. Now, in terms of AI, what's the final step that we're actually taking? Is to take all these pieces that we've put together and then see how we can use generative AI to even get more context into our system, because we still are getting feedback from our users that our reporting language within publications such as State of the World's Children is still highly technical language. So now what we're doing is taking all of this work, and we're, for example, using vector database over our data so that we can then have a system which will use retrieval augmented generation to provide context alongside of our data. Now, none of this is released publicly yet, but internally, we're essentially building we're building generative AI systems over the corpus of qualitative reporting data that we have, so that we can then put that alongside the actual data points that we have here, and that's really the current state that we're in as an organization, taking all these steps and then ending up in a situation where data is really well organized to take advantage of RAG and other generative AI techniques. Thank you. And with that, let me please pass back to Yang-Yi. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eva. And to try to unmute myself. Also, thank you to our other presenters, Heather, Prem, and Simon. And so, to save time, if you have a question to other presenters, please type it in the chat box, and we will have a Q&A session and to answer your questions. Without further delay, I will pass it over my colleagues, Luis, to moderate the next panel discussions. Over to you, Luis.
Thank you so much, John-Yi. I hope you can hear me well, and this have been incredibly good presentations and reflections. So thank you to all our presenters. Really good material for having a discussion now on that. But before going back to our presenters, please join me in welcoming Anu Peltola, who is director of the UNCTAD Statistics Department. Anu leads the statistical work in the UN Trade and Development Organization. It's helping countries measure SDG indicators in areas like trade, maritime transport, investment, illicit finance, and enterprise sustainability. And she's co-leading alongside UNDESA, UNDP, the Secretary General's initiative on value what counts to progress beyond GDP. Before joining UNCTAD, Anu worked within the statistics division of the UN Economic Commission for Europe and in Statistics Finland. So Anu, welcome. I would like to start the panel conversation with you, with your reflections on the presentations that we just heard. So as co-chair of the Committee of Chief Statisticians of the UN, I am also curious to hear from you, what do you see as the key challenges and opportunities in harmonizing data across agencies, especially within the current data governance frameworks that we have, and your general reflections about the process that we are in right now as a community of statistics, working also with the scientific community, the civil society, and so on, and private sector. So Anu, grateful for your reflections.
Thank you very much, Luis and colleagues. It's been really inspiring to follow the discussions today, and it's a pleasure to join you to discuss data modernization, an opportunity, but definitely also a challenge for us. So how do we ensure UN data remains credible, consistent, and useful in the era of data abundance? I'll speak from the perspective of the UN Trade and Development UNCTAD from our experience, but also considering what it means for the UN Chief Statisticians Network. As statisticians, we know that numbers shape narratives, but what happens when official statistics get lost in the sea of competing figures? What about when UN entities publish different numbers for the same issue? If we want our data to be trusted to drive change, we must tackle these challenges. First, we are not the only ones producing data. The private sector, research, governments, many different UN entities and other international organizations generate numbers to back up their business, research, and policy advice. This creates a paradox. Data is everywhere, yet trust remains fragile. Official statisticians are not anymore just producers of statistics, but also guardians of credibility. If users can't distinguish official statistics from other data or assess data quality, we risk losing their confidence. Secondly, we do still work in silos. While SDG indicators have really enhanced our collaboration, we are far from perfect today. Many of us share the same data, GDP, trade, employment, population, often with slight variations due to different update cycles. UNCTAD and the World Trade Organization, for instance, have long collaborated on joint trade statistics collection and release for full consistency. But we also release benchmark statistics extracted at a point in time. So this forces users to figure out which number is correct. Third, new technology offers solutions, but do we have the skills and the systems to use the technology effectively? AI-powered tools can enhance data harmonization, but only if we have the expertise to deploy them reliably and transparently. So how do we turn these challenges into opportunities, as you asked me? In many ways, at least. First, we must commit to better data coherence within UN entities. So inside each entity, users can always make a difference between official statistics and other data UN entities provide. Statistical units of UN entities must play a broader role in ensuring quality and upholding the fundamental principles of official statistics across their organizations to start with. Second, we should be more strategic about UN data products. Last year in UNCTAD, we launched UNCTAD Data Hub to bring clarity to our various databases, data insights, and analysis. We introduced data insights, short news stories with visualizations synced with our database at all times. But we still need to systematize data communications because the challenge is everyone is involved in data communications. It's not just statisticians. Third, we need better UN-wide coherence in data and its communication. The future of UN statistics is not just about producing more data, it's about making sense of what we already provide, being consistent, and clearly branding data quality. If we get this right, we can maintain the high standard of UN and national official statistics in the crowded information space. So if you would like me to address the collaboration-related question at the same time, Luis?
Yeah, so let's go first for a quick round with our presenters, and I'll get back to you with that. So thank you so much.
Okay,
Anna.
thank you very much. Back to you.
Yeah, really very, very important points about data quality and the stewardship role that we all play in this to make sure that data is trusted and that we are able to provide coherent messaging and helping users make sense of data that is trustworthy and authoritative. So now you spoke also to the challenges of leveraging technology. No, we need the skills, we need experience, we need infrastructure. How do we make that a reality, no, for us? So all of this is you touch on very important points that I would like to hear from our speakers, our panelists. So let me go first to Simon, coming from the broader perspective of data ecosystems that requires linking data from official sources in multiple domains to scientific data, to civil society generated data, and so on. So how do we make sure that this value of the data integration is visible, that the value equation in terms of cost benefit becomes clear, and so we know that integrating data is not easy at all. So how do we make the value of all these efforts clear and communicated to all the stakeholders that are part of it? In CODATA, you play a crucial role also in advocacy. So could you speak about that to us, Simon?
Yeah, thank you very much, Luis. Yes, obviously we have to communicate the value proposition. We are not arguing that we need to invest huge amounts of money to make sure that the data description of all possible data is as rich as possible. But what we are saying is that to address some very precise questions about the future of the planet and the viability of humanity on that, and urgent questions that citizens care about, that governments care about, the policymakers care about, in those areas, in those high priority research areas, those high priority policy areas, there we do need investment in data description. We can assist that with AI, of course, and we're exploring how that can be done, but we need to show the benefits. How do we do that? One way that we do that is through case studies, and we've often prioritized a case study oriented approach to implement the recommendations for particular projects and then demonstrate that. And I think that is making progress. For example, that example that I made about the European Social Survey data and the climate data, this not only does it make a data product, which is a significant resource for European researchers, but it also demonstrates how we can significantly cut costs for data wrangling and data integration. There was a report in 2018, 2019, from PwC for the European Commission that estimated the opportunity costs of not having fair data to be at least 20 billion euros for the European research area, and presented an estimate of 80% of research project effort going in data wrangling because we weren't using a standards-based approach. So we can argue the case from the benefits on a case study basis. We can argue the case for the return on investment and the retrieved opportunity costs through such economic analysis. And we've done a number of studies historically for the benefits of data sharing, and I think we'll be minded to do very similar work for data integration.
Thank you so much, Simon, for reminding us of the value proposition of what we are talking about. Let me now come back to Prem, who, from the perspective of the private sector, the technology sector, you have been at the cutting edge of progress to make data more accessible, more findable, more usable. But now we are in a completely new era of tools that are difficult to tame, so to speak, if we don't have the proper data structures, the proper data infrastructure, and as Anu was saying, the proper skills and expertise of everybody contributing. You spoke in your presentation about all these opportunities that LLMs, for instance, provide to make data more accessible for decision making, more usable, but also about the need to ground these technologies with facts, having fact checking, having enabling reasoning of this knowledge graph through this knowledge graph infrastructure. So my question to you is, what can we make, and what would you like to see from the data producing side, from the, say, official statistics? How can we make our data better usable in this new context of new technologies, to make sure that all the domain expertise, all the curation, all the data quality protocols that go through it are also reflected in the way tools like Gemma and others provide answers to users?
Thanks, Luis. That's a great question. Let me actually start by saying that, one of the beauties of the internet is that it is federated, interoperable, and distributed. And what that means is I can plug in any router at my home from Amazon, from 50 different companies, and it just works, right? I can use a Chrome browser, a Safari browser, a Microsoft Edge browser, and the website still works. And the reason all of this works technologically without thinking is all of these different platforms speak that same language. In the case of the internet, it's TCP/IP for the communications protocol, it's HTML for web pages, And everyone understands that same language and is then able to show items based on that same language. And I think that same parallel applies to data. So right now we are, using schema.org as the language of where we think data should move towards, because schema.org is something that's already used by 40 million plus websites out there to talk about their data. And so I think that if we can use that same sort of language when it comes to data, then it becomes easier not only for these technological systems to have a machine readable data that they can pick up and understand, but also, by the way, it becomes harder for companies to ignore that data that's out there so they can ensure that the language models they are releasing are safe and adhering to responsible AI principles along those ways. And so I think this is one, there's an action item for the data producing communities. Secondly, I think there's a responsibility for data producing communities to make sure that their data is accessible. I think there are a lot of cases where the licensing around that data is unclear. There's opportunities to make sure that licensing is clearer so that people feel more comfortable using that data. And I think one of the discomforts of using the data was mentioned earlier, which is this fear that what if the data doesn't agree with all the data out there? And again, this is an area where I really want to commend the UN team here, because when we brought this up early, that bringing it into an interoperable system may actually highlight areas of disagreement in that data. And the reaction from you, Luis, and your team was that this is a good thing, because those areas of disagreement are areas of further discussion that if we can find and we can understand why there's disagreement, which data source is more trustable and why, that results in this further loop of checks and balances that hopefully results in further trust in the data and the decisions that are being made from it. Does that help answer the question, Luis?
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Prem. And I'll come back to you, but you touched on what the producers, what we can do to make the data more amenable, to this new ecosystem where these new capabilities. But it's not only about technology. There are also crucial governance aspects of it. And I would like to come back to Eve on what do you see as the key aspects of ensuring responsible use of the data? How can we make AI, machine learning, and all these new very exciting technologies useful, but also ensuring that this use of the data is responsible? You have a lot of experience working with child-related data, of course, and that's a very sensible domain. No? So can you share with us your views about the other aspect beyond technology of making responsible use of the data?
That's a great question, Louis. One we've really wrestled with. I think many of us have. As we saw the rise over the last few years of large language models and generative AI, and understanding both that there are significant benefits to be had, but also significant risks. So how do we understand how to maximize the benefits, while we're minimizing the risks? And in fact, going back to the presentation I made before, so far our experiments with using AI, using generative AI to add context to our data, I would say we've been extremely cautious in how we're approaching our testing, and being, I'd say, quite rigorous in our quality assurance to make sure that what's coming out is actually responsible data that's not hallucinating. And now, what are some of the ways technically that we've been doing that? So, for example, we've been creating virtual assistants for different thematic areas. So, for example, our health team has virtual assistants which are even per country. So we'll take a single country, and the theme is purely around improving public health systems for children. We will input reports and other data, reports that we have for that country in that sector, and that's actually in a DB using a RAG system, so that when we're going to be building contextual data, we're actually building it from the database that we put together from our reports, which are our gold standard data that we already trust. Secondly, when we're actually we're using AI systems to build automatic reporting and presentation. So how do we also make sure we don't get hallucinations in there? When we're asking the system to use data, we're not asking it to do any data analysis. We're already presenting, this is the data set you're going to use. You're going to make me a diagram or a figure from it. And then contextually, you're going to go and get what we already put in the vector DB in our RAG system. And that's what you're going to respond with. So we're doing everything we can to reduce the risk of the generative AI hallucinating in any way. And then we're testing over the top of all that. I was really intrigued by Prem's discussion of the RIG system, and I look forward to catching up with you on that at a later point. But I think, coming from being data and analytics people with a lot of backgrounds in statistics and demography and data science and engineering, we have a really strong quality component and testing frameworks to everything we do. And I think that's absolutely crucial. And it's where I think some organizations have felt like perhaps data science is leaving statistics behind. In some ways, I feel now when we're seeing the use of AI and the risks, we're seeing where statistics background is becoming very useful again, so that you can actually understand how to put together appropriate quality assurance and testing frameworks to ensure that your data is actually accurate and responsible. Those are a few techniques we've been using on our side. Luis, you're muted.
Thank you so much. So thank you for your response, and I mean, you have walked us through the journey that UNICEF has undertaken over these different levels, from a fragmented system, moving to a single data warehouse, adding discoverability and context, adding searchability, now making data accessible to users in their own language, and putting all these guardrails on top of it. In the benefit of time, I will go back to our other speakers, and I will ask you to be, please, very brief, just to try to tie some notes on all these rich aspects of the conversation. So going back to Simon, this event is a side event of statistical community, the UN Statistical Commission. So in our community, we are often having this type of conversations, but I feel that sometimes we are missing some of what is going beyond the statistical community, and you have that perspective, from working with the intersection of academia, science, civil society, and official statistics. So can you give us some other examples of how are we making progress in this journey to more interoperability and some current best practices that are emerging in the broader data ecosystem? And again, please, if you could be very brief.
Thanks. It's difficult to answer that in brief, but what I'll do is really point to what Stefan said about the word partnering. And I will say, if you want me to, the brief version would be that we have found over the last few years in the work that we've been doing and what I described, that partnering is extremely useful, that there are some areas of science that are doing things very well and we can learn from those, and that we can also learn a great deal from what's going on in the UN system, in statistical agencies, in social science data archives, and in other areas of research. And we have found that a very rich strategy, a rich and rewarding strategy to take, to try and work across boundaries. Yes, sometimes we think that the data for a particular research area or gathered in a particular way is kind of unique. But data like snowflakes, each one is different, but there's a pattern there. And we have found it to be very rich to get people from different disciplines and different professions just talking about their data and understanding some of the generic challenges and the generic issues. And that's how I feel that we've developed, that we made significant step forward towards achieving the CDIF vision, because increasingly over the last 10 to 15, 5 years, we're seeing a number of domain agnostic data standards emerging, and they can be used very effectively in combination. So that partnership is very useful when it's really directed at understanding how data works and how we can combine data for various sources.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So partnership is really something that we need to emphasize. I want to end with Anu, and before going to Anu, Prem, what's next? What's in the pipeline? So as we are looking to build more partnerships, to expand our partnerships, what can we expect in the coming months, years, now from the perspective of the technology sector?
So this is obviously a very broad question, and I think anybody trying to be a prognosticator of the future is really buckling in right now, as technology is showing us what it can do every month versus us often sometimes understanding the level of discovery. I'll just give you a small example of that, which is about a few months ago, there were 2 Nobel Prizes announced from work coming out of Google, one of which was around what was viewed for many years as an unsolvable problem around protein folding. And applying these large models in this space was able to find a solution to what was thought of as an unsolvable problem, right? And so I think the applications of this new technology to me is sort of like the creation of fire or the wheel. We don't know yet all the different applications with which we will use this at this moment, but I do think to be able to use it, fire is a great example where fire requires a certain amount of safety in its use, right? Otherwise we can hurt ourselves, burn ourselves, so on and so forth. And similarly, I think that this work around grounding is an area I am very committed towards. And one of the reasons I'm committed towards it is because these large models can be experts in how they sound and completely lying to you at the same time. And this is really a problem because you can think about creating a large quantity of data faster than we as humans can consume that is full of mistruths. And the only way to potentially fight against that is to use that same tool to algorithmically understand, remove, highlight those mistakes, correct those mistakes. And so one of the areas that we're interested in doing is taking this early research experiment we have on Data Gemma and seeing how we can operationalize it and actually implement it at large scale. And so how can we include that into tooling such as Gemma and eventually, hopefully, Gemini? And then how can we at least tell you which pieces of the answer you can definitely trust, right? This is one area that I'm very excited and committed to. And I think to get there, we want to be able to show that the data you folks produce, the importance it has in this next technological revolution that we're actively in right now.
Thank you so much, Prem. And I love your answer. And the reference now for this protein folding problem reminded me also of this Nobel Prize acceptance ceremony, where one of the key messages was these individuals who were at the pinnacle of that research didn't do it alone. It's work done by hundreds and thousands of contributors, and I think that's also the spirit that we need to work with. And with that, I would like to pass it to Anu for your final reflections. You represent here the official statistical community together with Eve. So I would like to hear now, what are your takeaways? How do we move this conversation forward, particularly as we move now to the next session of the Statistical Commission? Anu.
Thank you. That's a heavy responsibility. I feel like we need to have the head in the clouds and the feet on the ground. Perhaps the collaboration between the private sector AI leaders and official statisticians brings both sides. You can guess who is where. from the discussion, we do realize that AI-driven nowcasting, real-time analytics, digital public goods, they are all here. It's not the future. So the truth is we can't fully benefit if we try to do this alone, and we shouldn't. So partnerships are essential. First, what we should take away, I think we need to rethink the link of IT and statistics really seriously. Traditionally, IT offered equipment and systems, but today it provides more often solutions for data management. Data science is the fusion of statistics, mathematics, and computing. Here, private sector collaboration can be key. At UNCTAD, close collaboration between our IT and statistics has become essential already. So we launched an AI incubator network with 80 voluntary participants from across the house last year, and it revealed the high demand for AI solutions. Scaling up AI requires a critical mass of expertise, not to invest in silos in each unit, but instead benefit from shared expertise. And even where we don't know what we could do, we can come together and try and seek solutions and try to find the knowledge out there. So we need to be managing the risks, as was mentioned, by fully understanding the AI tools we apply and aligning them with statistical principles. And this can really add value. And I think that was a great point mentioned here. Secondly, we need a strategic approach to global UN data and its governance. Right now, individually, different entities often mix official statistics, experimental, analytical statistics, externally sourced data with little guidance for users. Several national statistical offices have already structured such quality categories, and we need to do something similar globally. Even more, what if UN agencies could automatically link databases, ensuring the latest figures from primary sources are mirrored across our platforms? This could already be feasible, and I think the UN Data Initiative is really building this future. Finally, we need a stronger UN system to close data and digital divides. I just can't not link to the needs of member states here. As a new co-chair of the Committee of Chief Statisticians of the UN system, I have listened very carefully to the discussion and absorbed key messages shared today. We need to discuss how we as community can enhance coherence, clarity of data products, strengthen joint capabilities in the UN so that we can support member states in advancing data and digital public goods. If we can share, scale, and adapt data and digital innovations that we already have in each of our areas, in countries, in UN organizations, privately, we can deliver real benefits for countries, especially developing countries. So I hope the data futures are not shaped by silos or in silos, and it really should depend on how well we collaborate across agencies, academia, the private sector, so that UN data are meaningful, actionable, and trustworthy. So I'm very inspired. Thank you very much. And back to you.
Thank you so much, Anu. And well, this has been really an amazing panel, inspiring, and I'm really grateful to all of you, Anu, Prem, Simon, Eve, for this very, very clear messages. And on behalf of my colleagues in the Secretariat UNSD, I cannot thank you enough for your contribution, for your time, your expertise. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we don't have any more time for Q&A, but I hope some of the questions that have been put in the chat have been answered. If we find some unanswered questions, we will make sure that we forward them to the respective persons that have been addressed, and try to facilitate that these questions are answered in one way or another. So thank you so much, and I really look forward to continue this journey together. So with this, we conclude
Thank you.
the webinar. Thank you.